A memorandum of understanding is a commitment to work together in good faith to develop a binding contract. I liken it to getting engaged, right? If you adopt this memorandum of understanding tonight, you will be engaged with a good faith commitment to work toward carrying out and moving forward with the items addressed in the MOU. Much like a couple might imagine their premarital agreement, you will move forward and work out the terms of your premarital agreement. If you can't do that, you stop and it's over, right? You have an obligation to move forward in good faith. In this particular MOU, it addresses 3 separate projects, 2 primary projects and 1 secondary project. Primary projects are the rehabilitation and development of the Elks Building. The second primary project is the corner of Craven and South Front Street that folks locally call the Talbot's Lot. The developer is interested in doing both of those projects at the same time. If they're going to mobilize and bring their forces to rehabilitate the Elks Building, it makes much more economic sense for them to do 2 projects rather than just 1. That's why I call those 2 the primary projects. The third project is a secondary project that may or may not ever happen for lots of reasons. I'm going to circle back to that. On the primary projects with respect to the Elks Building, we don't have a particular ask at this point. What the developer is asking for is a commitment to work towards and use city resources to identify grants, state, federal funds, anything we can do, incentives to help mitigate their costs. They have a preliminary budget of $25 million for that project. There are traffic issues, parking issues, off-site issues, infrastructure issues, many issues to untangle. What they are asking for is that the city work with them to identify those issues, and to the extent we can help them with resources, to do so. Those resources may include a period of tax abatement or tax contributions, where we take part of the increase in the future taxes and rebate that to them for a number of years to offset some of their costs, right? That is a very typical and traditional type of project, where from the local government's point of view, we look to the increase in the tax base, we look at the incremental revenue that's generated from that investment, and we share part of those increased taxes back with the developer to offset costs. Why would you do that? Under the law, you can only do that, and this is important, you can only do that under the law if you find as a board that the project increases the population, increases the job opportunities, increases the business opportunities in your city. So that's a finding that you will have to make at the very end of the process. The law does not let us give money to people because we like them or want them to succeed. It has to be a cost benefit where you determine are the jobs and tax base and opportunities worth the incentive. The second project, the Talbot's Lot, is proposed to be a first-floor retail establishment with upper-level luxury apartments. The proposed budget for that, the preliminary budget, is $15 million. The ask on that project is, again, the same as the first. Work with them in good faith to identify grants, state, federal, local opportunities to mitigate their costs, but also to contribute the land as part of the incentive for that project. And those two together, the 2 primary projects, would be bundled as one package. To convey land as part of an economic development incentive, we have to get it appraised, we have to understand what it's worth, And we have to do the exact same math that we would do on an Elks Building project, where we have to verify that the value that we're contributing to that project results in increased jobs, increased tax base, increased business for our city. That's the big picture on those two primary projects. There's a million details we can discuss about both of those projects. The Talbot's Corner has a lot of issues. We have 2 transformers that sit on the northwest corner of that property. We know that there's some environmental issues on that property. So there's lots to work through as we work toward a development agreement if we move forward. One of the things I've heard in concerns is, why would you give away land to a person and then it turns out they decide not to build or won't move forward? Well, of course, we would never do that. These agreements have milestones and conditions that are built into them. So there's no version where we give someone a deed to our property and hope they do their best and hope that it works out, right? There are simple, objective milestones, financial guarantees, loans, performance bonds that must be in place before we take the step to make that commitment if you go forward. The secondary project that we refer to as the bathroom section of Union Point Park, that is the northern parcel that is north of the terminus of South Front Street. South Front Street is the main road into the park. We are talking about all the land to the left as you face the Trent River. There are plenty of obstacles with respect to the secondary project. The first practical obstacle is that the developer may not want to move forward in the future. If the first 2 primary projects are not successful, it would make no sense to move forward, right? So there is a practical obstacle to overcome. If and when that time comes, is it going to make sense for them? There are a number of legal obstacles to that project. We have, many years ago, received a grant to acquire that property. That property is restricted. It cannot be converted to any other use at this time. If there is going to be a conversion of that use, it has to go through a rigid process, starting with the state, ending up with the National Park Service, where you, as a board, would have to prove to the National Park Service that you have found and acquired a comparable public park to offset the loss of the space that you would be converting. That is not a small ask. There's a lot of steps into that one hurdle. So that may never come to pass. That project is an 18 to 24-month project. If we started tomorrow on that conversion process to just ask if it is possible, we may be 2 years away from getting an answer as to whether that's possible. We also have the practical problem of identifying and getting under contract a suitable piece of property that would meet or exceed the same conditions that exist on this parcel. Other practical obstacles that one would talk about in a development agreement. We talk about that parcel from South Front Street down to the waterfront, but there's not a version where we would release the public's rights along the waterfront. In my entire career, my entire lifetime, certainly my professional career, there has always been a vision to connect Lawson Creek Park all the way around the waterfront up the Neuse River. So if that project were to come to pass, it would be with an expectation and a legal reservation of that waterfront for a public purpose, so that that river walk could be continued along the waterfront, around Comfort Suites, and over to the connection in front of Persimmons. So that would be a material issue that we would have to deal with. What does that mean? I don't know at this point what that river walk reservation might look like, but it's an issue that we would have to untangle if you were to move forward to make sure that we maintain that public connectivity and public access to the Neuse River behind this parcel. Other issues are restrooms. We have restrooms on that property. I would expect that you would want to find a way to maintain 24/7 access to public restrooms on that parcel. Parking is a major obstacle for that parcel. Lots to untangle with how would one deal with parking that's required for that development, parking that's required to use and access the park, the remaining park, parking to keep that traffic flowing safely. So we are calling that phase of this the secondary project because of all of the high hurdles. Which begs the question, why are we talking about that now when it's so hard? And the answer is, it's hard, and if it's ever going to happen, all that information needs to be processed now, and an effort to be made now, so that both parties can start thinking through that to see if it's even possible, given all the conditions that the city is going to want and all of the conditions that the developer may want. It's a big ask, it's a complicated ask, and it's going to take a long time to untangle, and it may never come to pass, but we'll never know until we start. That's why it is packaged as a part of this.
Mayor, I have an extra question. Scott, can you kind of give some insight to the citizens as well on why they're probably just now hearing this information? Because you know, when we're in the process of looking for some sort of development, or people come to us, we need to be privy to it first before we think that it's a good idea to move forward, just so that people understand that we're trying to do the best to be transparent.
Yes,
and that we weren't trying to.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. And let me circle back to the mayor. One of the mayor's many questions he asked me originally. What is this process? The state statutes allow local governments to have economic development agreements. Generally, those agreements, those contracts, binding contracts, are negotiated in closed session. Why closed session? Because we're negotiating. As you as a board collaborate and think of your asks and your wants, we can't do it on TV in front of our negotiating partner, so we do it in a closed session so that we negotiate. Once we come to a meeting of the minds and we write that contract called an economic development agreement, the statute requires a public hearing, which we could have done, had a public hearing, after which, at the end of that hearing, you could have adopted that contract and it would be done. That is not what's happening here. There is no requirement whatsoever to do an MOU. An MOU is the most transparent way to go through this process. We had to start in closed sessions so that we could understand as a board what our wants were. It may well have been that we didn't want to talk about this at all, in which case there would be no more closed sessions and no MOU. But as you meet and talk through these issues, we come to a consensus that we are now at a step that we've dated for a while, and this is an opportunity to get engaged to see if we are suitable to be married someday. So this is what an MOU is for. This is the most transparent process. We are here in a live meeting, which is effectively a public hearing, none of which is required at all. But it's the best that you can do to be transparent in this process.
Mayor, I have a question. Scott, also, this is dangerous. Also, can you explain to the public that the New Bern Historic LLC has nothing to do with the New Bern Historical Society? Because I've gotten some phone calls and questions about that as well.
Yes, ma'am. That is the name of the LLC that the developer chose to take title to the Elks Building. That is just the name of their private company that they will use to develop that building. Not associated with any city business, city commissions, boards, or
Anybody else? Mr. Hughes, did you have a few comments or any presentation?
So we did want to show you some visuals of what we're talking about. If I could ask Colleen to pull those up, that way everyone has an idea of the properties in question.
Do we have an update on the fee? On the
The,
fee?
according
The
to
feed is up
Colleen,
on cable. We're still working on the others.
so we'll go through and give you an idea. The Elks Building, this is located at 301 Middle Street. This is what the New Bern Historic LLC purchased it the 1st of January. The Pollitt lot, also located at the corner of South Front and Craven Street, is the grassy parcel that you see. That's the aerial overhead. And that's just under half an acre. Then you see a full aerial of Union Point Park. Now, Union Point Park is a little over 6 acres in total. The area that we're talking about for this is the northernmost section. Colleen, if you go to the next slide. This is the proposed area. This is approximately 2 acres. And so as the city attorney mentioned, you see a blue line on the right-hand side which shows how the Riverwalk could extend up to go around the adjoining property. As the city attorney talked about, he talked about the scope of work for the project and the estimated anticipated investment, but I want to go ahead and talk about the estimated ad valorem taxes for each of these projects and the jobs that the Kessler Group is referring to. So in the Elks project, anticipated investment is $25 million. The estimated annual ad valorem taxes will be approximately $120,550. Estimated annual MSD taxes would be approximately $34,375. The estimated number of jobs generated for the boutique hotel would be 70, with 7 executive positions with an average salary of $87,700, 4 manager positions with an average salary of $54,250, and 59 line staff workers with an average wage of $16 per hour. On the south front Craven property, like the attorney said, this would be retail first floor industrial apartments above with an anticipated investment of $15 million. Estimated annual ad valorem taxes would be $72,330. Estimated annual MSD taxes would be $20,625. On the restroom parcel at Union Point Park, they are proposing a grand luxury hotel. Their anticipated investment would be $75 million. The estimated annual ad valorem tax would be $361,650. Estimated annual MSD tax would be $103,125. They estimate generating 109 jobs. They also estimate 8 executive positions with an average salary of $104,000, 11 management positions with an average salary of $52,000, and 90 line staff positions with an average wage of $15 per hour.
Anything else?
emphasize that if you go forward tonight, it will simply start a series of meetings, largely public, that will ultimately culminate with a public hearing where all of these details that people are very reasonably and logically raising would come up and be presented. But all those issues, the development of these parcels are subject to all of our local ordinances, all of our historic guidelines. They are just hurdle after hurdle to go through, all of which are public and require public hearings. And all those efforts are quite expensive to go through. So without this first step, it's a tremendous expenditure of city resources on our side, of their expenses on their side, if we don't even want to have a further conversation about what we're going to do or not. But the point is, this is just the very, very first step of what may be, if you go forward, a very long process that will ultimately and transparently address all of these issues that will come back before you in large respect, which means it's before the public to address and have input on.
Okay, thank you.